All right, Shalom. This is brother Nahaya from the GMS Orlando camp. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yashar Allah. And a sincere salutation to all you Akim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. Yahweh is the name of the one they ignorantly call God. Yahweh Shai is the name of the one they ignorantly call Jesus. Bahashem is in the name. Rakah is spirit. Kodash is holy. Akyam is brothers. Akwath is sisters. Shalom means peace. And Yashar Allah is Israel in the ancient Paleo Hebrew. I want to go into a lesson through the spirit based off of this article. Lord willing, I'll be able to put it in the description. And it says, we're all worse off. Top economist says people need to accept that everyone is poorer in today's economy. Now, I want to go into a lesson through the spirit because we all know, according to prophecy, all right, that this economy is going to collapse. All right, that's the reality of what's going to happen according to prophecy. But even now, you can see on the news that things are beginning to happen. All right, concerning prophecy. All right, inflation, as Esau attempts to bring about the MOTB, this society has to collapse economically. So people will be forced or they will desire peace and safety through the MOTB. And this is important through the spirit because, again, to know is half the battle, but knowing in itself is half the battle. And most of our people are unaware, as in the days of Noah, as the scriptures say. So I'm going to continue reading. It says, Americans aren't the only ones grappling with the rampant inflation. During an episode of Columbia Law School and Milstein Center's Beyond Unprecedented podcast, Bank of England's chief economist, Hugh Pill, said that people in the UK need to accept that we're all worse off. All right. And this goes into, see, what's going to happen is the fantasy that people have imagined in Babylon the Great, which is America, is going to be shattered. All right. All of those who have put their hope in Egypt, who have put their spirit in Egypt to live here and exist here and excel and succeed here, are going to be horribly disappointed in the times that we're coming into, because this is a time that's going to take them unawares. All right. Continuing, it says this. Pill explained that as people keep demanding higher pay, it only causes businesses to rack up prices, further exacerbating inflation. Because we're in a time through the spirit where inflation is only going to increase and everybody's desiring more because their dollar doesn't go as far as it used to. The pound doesn't go as far as it used to. And this is why the Lord gives us certain wisdom in the scriptures. Now, let's go here first. All right, this is 2 Esdras 16 and 18. The beginning of sorrows and great mournings, the beginning of famine and great death. Now, you have to keep in mind that famine isn't always a lack of the ability of the land to give forth fruit. But there are manufactured famines, if you will. For instance, if you don't have enough money to buy certain things, if you don't have enough money to buy your necessities, you're essentially in a famine because you're in a position where you can't afford to eat or to feed your family. That is a version or a variation, if you will, of famine. All right, continuing, it says this. The beginning of wars and the power shall stand in fear. The beginning of evils, what shall I do when these evils shall come? Behold, famine and plague, tribulation and anguish are sent as scourges for amendment. But for all these things they shall not turn from their wickedness, nor be always mindful of the scourges. Because many people see the scourges on the news, but they're not mindful of them because they haven't become personal yet. All right, continuing on, it says in verse 21, Behold, victuals shall be so good cheap upon earth, that they shall think themselves to be in good case. And even then shall evils grow upon the earth, sword, famine, and great confusion. For many of them that dwell upon earth shall perish of famine, and the other that escape the hunger shall the sword destroy. So when you think back to 2020, when the pandemic happened, victuals were in essence good cheap. And mostly that was because there was all of this welfare, whether it was the stimulus, whether it was the unemployment, all of these different things made it seem like people were in a good case. Even now we're in 2023 and things are the effects of that are beginning to be experienced by people on a personal level, but they're not mindful of these scourges. So it's only going to go up from here. All right. So when you see this guy, and this again is being said by economists. All right. Economists are saying this. These are people who study, the flow of business, if you will, traffic. In Ezekiel, what did it say about, let's get it. What did it say about the Prince of Tyre? Okay, so we're going to go to Ezekiel 28. I'm just going to get the point. All right, Ezekiel 28 and 3. Behold, thou art wiser than Daniel. There is no secret that they can hide from thee. With thy wisdom and with thine understanding, thou hast gotten thee riches and hast gotten gold and silver into thy treasures. All right, and this goes into Esau, who was the prince of Tyre, if you will. Because when you start at verse 1, it says, the word of the Lord came again unto me, saying, Son of man, say unto the prince of Tyrus, Salakia, Tyrus, not Tyre, Tyrus, thus saith the Lord power, because thine heart is lifted up, and thou hast said, I am a power. I sit in the seat of power, in the midst of the seas. Yet thou art a man and not power, though thou set thine heart as the heart of power. And who does this describe in the modern era? All right, it describes Esau, Edom. All right, he's the modern day prince of Tyrus. All right, not Tyre, but Tyrus. All right, and continuing, it says, verse 3, behold, thou art wiser than Daniel. There is no secret that they can hide from thee. With thy wisdom and with thine understanding, thou hast gotten thee riches and hast gotten gold and silver into thy treasures. By thy great wisdom and by thy traffic hast thou increased thy riches, and thine heart is lifted up because of thy riches. All right. Now, when you go into traffic, all right, it's basically the flow of business. Because when you have traffic, when you have the flow of business, economies deal with the flow of business. Okay, so when you deal with economists, these are guys who specialize in the study of the flow of business. So when they say certain things like we're all worse off and that people are becoming poorer through inflation, all right, these are people whose life's mission, if you will, their day job is studying the economy. That's their career. So when you see these things through the spirit, it's easy to understand that all of this goes back to prophecy ultimately. And as the scripture said, the Lord will make their tongue to fall upon themselves. So as we read further, I'm going to read this again because this statement is important. Pill explained that as people keep demanding higher pay, it only causes businesses to rack up prices, further exacerbating inflation. Somehow in the UK, someone needs to accept that they are worse off and stop trying to maintain their real spending power by bidding up prices, rather through higher wages or passing energy costs on to customers, he said on the podcast. Pill's comments come a year after Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey told the BBC that there needed to be some level of wage moderation as a means to tame inflation more quickly. All right. And that inflation is a slippery slope, because once you go down that road, once you start trying to increase prices, ultimately everybody has to increase prices. This is why there's a fight against the minimum wage going up, because when you increase minimum wage, all those companies do is they charge more. All right. And ultimately, it's because these currencies are not backed by anything. It's a fiat currency system. And we know through the spirit that this heavy laden debt, all right, this system built on thick clay, all right, is eventually going to crumble. All right, let's go to here. This Habakkuk chapter 2 and verse 4. Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. Yea, also because he transgresseth by wine. He is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. Shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, Woe to him that increaseth that which is not his? How long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay. And we know, let's go to it. because we're going to get the Hebrew word for thick clay, and ultimately it's debt. All right. So what the personal family in Babylon the Great and abroad is experiencing is really a product of Esau setting the system up a certain type of way. You know, he's been given dominion and he hasn't judged upright. And so the Lord's going to use him as an example of a consequence to wickedness. And this is why when you look at the scriptures, the Lord tells us certain things like being content, all right, is great gain, because we live in a society that's built off covetousness. And what did the Lord say? All right, this is Luke chapter 12 and verse 15. And he said unto them, take heed and beware of covetousness, for a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth. All right, and this is why people are so bent on the rat race. It's not necessarily their needs, it's their wants that put them on this rat race and that ultimately lead them down the path of destruction. Whereas the Lord told us godliness with contentment is great gain. Now, why does the Lord tell us that? Why does the Lord tell us certain things like be as pilgrims on the earth? He that selleth, let's get it. So this is 2nd Esdras chapter 16, because really the Lord's preparing us for the time that we're coming into. And while the world is in rejoicing right now because they think that they're further and closer to that carrot on the stick that Esau has, ultimately they're being led to their destruction, like Pinocchio in that movie. All right. This is 2nd Esdras 16. I'm going to jump down. This is verse 40. O my people, hear my word. Make you ready to thy battle, and in those days be even as pilgrims upon the earth. He that selleth, let him be as he that fleeth away, and he that buyeth as one that will lose. He that occupieth merchandise, as he that hath no profit by it, and he that buildeth, as he that shall not dwell therein. So the Lord is instilling a mentality in us that when shit hits the fan, excuse my French, to detach. And we're learning to detach now. All right. Whereas you see it plainly, right? The news, these are experts, allegedly, you know, these economists, and they're going into certain things about, and this is England right now. So we're dealing with the UK in this article, but this is happening abroad because all of these economies are entangled. They're all attached. And especially when you deal with the West, when the Western economies fall, or when the Western economies experience a decline, other nations feel the hurt even more. So when you have a Western nation like the UK talk about being poor and recognizing that inflation is affecting the average Edomite and other nations that are in these lands, it's taking a toll on the world. And all of this ultimately goes back to prophecy, man. All right, real quick. I'm going to just jump down to the last paragraph. It says, as of March 2023, inflation in the UK was 10.1%, down from 10.4% from a month prior, but still more than double the current 5% inflation rate in the US. All right. And ultimately, it's all going to trickle down because eventually that debt is going to have to be repaid or not. And to default on that debt is going to have even more consequential effects. And we're in that time through the Spirit where we know ultimately that the Lord proclaimed that we're gonna enter into that time where victuals were cheap and it was a deception. All right. Matter of fact, let's go here. This is 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 3. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Because again, when you think about that bank run that happened with the Silicon Valley Bank, all right, that sparked a certain level of panic. And Joe Biden had to get on a press conference. Why? Because again, with fiat currencies, the moment people lose faith in those currencies, everything falls apart. This is why when you go into Habakkuk, all right, the 2nd chapter, and you deal with the word thick clay, it says this. All right, the Hebrew word is a batyat. All right, a batyat, and it says wedges of weight of pledges, heavy debts. All right, and this system is built on debt. The average person's life is built on debt. The currency itself is not built on anything substantial, anything tangible. It's not backed by gold. It's not backed by silver. It's backed by the belief that it's valuable. And the Lord told us not to run an economy like this. So when you look at an article like this, it's really twofold, right? Because it shows that prophecy is being fulfilled, but it also shows the importance of the counsel that the Lord has given us. Because the Lord told us, let's get it, because I mentioned it a few times, so I just want to bring it out. This is 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 6. But godliness with contentment is great gain, for we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. Because most of our people's identity is attached to the amount of money they make, to the type of job that they work. And in the time period where the Lord is beginning to destroy the society that people live in, if your identity is attached to things that are involved with this empire standing and exceeding, you're going to fall in these times. Because the Lord said, beware of covetousness. And this empire is built upon covetousness. Esau's nature is covetousness. And when you have Edomites telling other Edomites to make peace with the fact that you're not as rich as you used to be, what does that tell you about everybody else? This is the reality that people are stepping into, and they're not prepared for it. But the scriptures say that. All right, let's get that. This is Matthew 24 and 37. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. And when you go to this verse, Matthew 24, I'm going to jump down to 37. You know what? Let me go to 39, and I'm going to get the Greek word for new. So this is the Greek word for new.
Strong's G 1097. Gnosko.
All right, and it says, to learn, to know, come to know, get a knowledge of, perceive, feel, to become known, to know, understand, perceive, have knowledge of, to understand, to know. So they're not going to understand the weight of their decisions. They're not going to understand any of this ultimately outside of the elect until this thing happens. And that's why when you see Matthew 24 and 38, it says, for as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not or perceived not, not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. So you have people who are completely oblivious, willfully ignorant, if you will, of what's happening. Because they're noticing it. You go to the grocery store, you see the prices are beginning to be higher than they used to be for the basic necessities, eggs, milk, such and so forth. But again, as in the days of Noah, they're fully convinced that this thing is going to continue forever, that there is some light at the end of the tunnel, and they refuse to accept the reality. And this is why you have an Edomite. This is probably an Edomite that's telling his own people that we're coming into a time where they have to accept that they're poor, and they're not going to accept that. And that goes into normalcy bias. If you look it up, you'll understand it. But that's the time that we're in. And that's why the Lord says, look, godliness with, matter of fact, let's get it again. This is 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 6. But godliness with contentment is great gain. All right, because again, the Lord is instilling in us a mindset. Lord willing, we be a part of that number so that we can make it through Jacob's trouble, to endure it. Whereas most people are not prepared for this society to fall. And I'm not talking about physically prepared, but really is spiritually and mentally. Because riches profit not in a day of wrath. You can save all your little coins and shekels all you want, but ultimately it won't defend you if the Lord is not with you. So when you have economists talking about, how did he put it? He said, what? We're all worse off. If Edomites are saying this, you have to understand the time that we're living in. And the elect understand, Lord willing, we be a part of that number. But most people are unawares that there's a classism. There's a class war between the Edomites, the elite Edomites and the normal Edomites, the middle class, even the so-called rich Edomites who are not plugged into the circle. And as that wealth gets translated, there are going to be many casualties of war because the Lord is ultimately using that as a vessel, all right, to bring about judgment. And that's why the Lord gives us a different mindset compared to the world, because this world, they're willing to work day and night, overtime, 7 days a week, no days off to gather, all right, ultimately for this, all right. This is Ecclesiastes 2, and I'm going to jump down to 26. For Yahweh Shemel shall give it to a man that is good in his sight, wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner he giveth travail, to gather and to heap up, that he may give to him that is good before Yahweh Shemel Shai. Because ultimately the Lord is giving wisdom and knowledge to the elect according to their measure to prepare them for the time that we're coming into. And even in the time where you have professionals, and I put quotations on that, admitting that we're coming into a time of drastic, man, people have no idea, but that's the time that we're coming into. And the reason I paused for a second is because there was an article that I saw on Elon Musk mentioning something. Let me see if I can find it. And this is a realization that all of the top people of this society are coming to. That look, we're not in a time where things are about to get better. All right, you know what? Lord willing, let me do a search real quick. See if it pop up. Nah, it's not coming up. But there was a statement that he made concerning the economy. And what people fail to realize is that things are about to get worse. And you have these guys saying certain things, but it's falling on deaf ears in this time. All right. Yeah, I can't find it. But yeah, here we go. The Wadi Hal by Shemel Shah says economist warns catastrophic fall in American living standard. Elon Musk weighs in on de-dollarization, U.S. dollar weaponization. All right, so Salakia, it's an economist that warns it. But again, you have these so-called economists that are warning, like, look, we're coming into a time where things are about to get serious. And these are people who spend a day in, day out. You know, if you work a job for 30 years doing something, you kind of have you kind of know. All right. It's not something that's like you have a good wealth of knowledge. You're competent in a certain field. If you've learned it enough, if you've been involved with it enough. And see, now we're in a time through the spirit where these things are going to be felt by people on a personal level. And then it's going to hit home. All right. Matter of fact, let's see if we can comb through this article. It says this: economist Peter St. Onge has warned that U.S. dollar weaponization will lead to soaring inflation, a catastrophic fall in American standard of living, and a U.S. that falls off the world stage. Now, on one end, right? On one end, we had a UK economist talk about this. Now we have an American one talking about the same thing. All right. And everybody sees the writing on the wall. On top of the Edomites in Russia, the Russians moving outside of the dollar, all of this has implications. And we know all of this goes back to prophecy ultimately. All right. And this is the economist right here. And it's an Edomite, man. What looks to be an Edomite. All right. Matter of fact, let's go here. Because ultimately they make statements and then they get filtered through the scriptures. And that's how the watchmen are able to proclaim how everything relates to prophecy. Because the Lord is ultimately in the details. All right, this is Psalm 64:8. And it reads, so they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away. And you see how it could easily trickle down. All right, because when you have to increase wages, when you have your workers refusing to come to work and you have to be forced to increase the wage, what are you going to do as a result? To make sure you can pay your bills, you're going to raise the price. And eventually you get to a point where people's dollar isn't as valuable as it was, and it gets worse. And these are the details the Lord is using to force plagues upon the earth concerning famine, concerning the grinding ceasing. Esau using these pressure points to bring about the mark of the beast. All of this goes back to prophecy. All right. Matter of fact, this is Isaiah 55. And I'm going to jump down to verse 10. And it reads, for as the rain cometh down and the snow from heaven, and returneth not thither, but watereth the earth, and maketh it bring forth and bud, that it may give seed to the sower and bread to the eater. So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it. So if the Lord said this place is going to fall, if the Lord said plagues are coming upon the earth, it's going to be accomplished. And what we're witnessing through the Spirit is the details. So Lord willing, this was edifying. With that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasha Allah, and a sincere salutation to all Yuakim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. Shalom.